Hey guys, my artifact was I basically just made a video game, and the video game was a research project for the ideas of how game developers try and teach you intuitively rather than just telling you straight out. And so the aims of my project were to, first of all, create a game by which we're taught all the mechanics of the game, but it's not told you directly through the game or by another human. So basically I could sit anybody down at the scene and they'd be able to play the game, find out all the controls, and I wouldn't have to tell them anything. And the game would psychologically condition you to know and learn about the game and how to play it. I would do this through music, aesthetics, and gameplay itself. And another aim was just to code the game. It's quite hard to code a game from scratch. And to also try and maintain a wider audience. So if you've never played a game before, you should also be able to play the game just as easily as hopefully someone who plays games very often. So what is this intuitive design? So let me give you some examples of intuitive design. Door handles. So when you come up to a door, if it's a flat surface, generally you think to push, because you can't pull the flat surface towards you. Likewise, with a handle, you think to pull it towards you. Fairly basic stuff. Second of all, you don't need to know, you don't need a manual on how to sit on a chair. You see, there's a cushion on the chair. Don't sit on the spindly four-leg part. You know, it's quite obvious. It's intuitively designed, you may say. And so, how do people try and teach you how to use their products in video games? So an example, maybe through different. There we go. Okay, please. Video. There we go. So for example, you know, this Assassin's Creed pop-ups come along the side of the screen, and we'll just say, hey, do press the A button to jump or something like that. This other side of the screen is a bit hard to see and a bit confusing. Basically, it just says it's a button map. So if you press the A button here, it goes down to here, and you can see it just tells you straight up. That's how you play the game. That's what you do. So let's say they have a short class in FIFA or Lotball or something like that. And these aren't necessarily bad ways to teach players how to play the game, but what's unique about video games is that they can teach the player as they play, as Aaron Hansen states here. Because video games are an interactive medium, unlike movies where you are passive and you just absorb the information, you actually have an input into the outcome of the medium, so or the story of your game. So some of the useful parts of these invisible tutorials or intuitively designed tutorials are the fact that it creates a more engaging experience, and instead of, you feel like you've accomplished more as an individual when you play the game. Instead of going up to a puzzle and getting told directly what to do, you figure it out yourself and you use your own intellect and basically intelligence to find out, so you feel quite good about yourself. However, it takes a bit more effort to design the game in this way, and so you'll find it much more common in older games such as Sonic and Mario, when they had less hard drive space to just tell you bluntly what to do. So they had to use efficient ways to teach the player how to play the game. One example, as you can see here, if I was to ask you the question, which way do you go to complete the level? I think most of us would think, go that way. Why? Because the guys up here looking that way, looking to the right, but there's also all this space on the right side of the screen, just communicating to us, go and adventure, be curious, go find out what's over that side. And it's a very simple technique and we don't really realize it, but that's the whole idea of intuitive design. You're engaged rather than taught directly. So I use this technique in my own game. So when you start off the game, you've got a guy running across the screen, and then your dude chases after him. And you're like, oh, probably should go chase after that guy. And then there you go, you start the game. But before I tell you how I designed my game to teach you how to play the game, I need to tell you what I need to teach you exactly. So your character can do three main essential functions. Horizontal movement, which is just running around. Vertical movement, which is just jumping around. And to create a bit of depth, you have an attack. Oh, look at that, it's amazing. So good. And so you are taught these different actions or verbs through different types of conditioners. One of the non-active, they have two different types of conditioners which are non-active. One of them is non-active conditioners, which is the level itself. So my level was based off the narrative structure of Kaishu Tenketsu, which is a Japanese four-line structure which goes something like this. It's generally used in poems and comics, but people have also applied it to game design. basically you have 4 steps. You have an introduction to a theme, then you develop the theme, and then you add a little twist to that theme, and then you offer a final conclusion. Boom, pretty simple. And so I try to apply Kishen Ketsu, Japanese word, to my game. So an idea would be, start the game by offering very basic jumps. If you fail, it's no biggie, you don't die, you can just go back to the start and try again. Then as you go later into the game, well, if you do miss your jump, you are going to die. It's a bit harder. But then, later on, add a little twist. You're coming along here, boom, this guy throwing fireballs at you. What are you going to do? You have to think on your feet a little bit. And the final, the toughest, well, it's not quite the toughest challenge, but it's just a final conclusion that you can kind of really consolidate your skill overall as a player. Now, I'll move on to the second type of condition, active conditions. These are your actual enemies yourself, the things that move around the stage that force you to do stuff. So I have 3 main types of enemies. The code I'm going to show you, specific code for them, is unique to them. So some things, like them feeling hurt when you hit them with your boomerang, that applies to all, but I'm going to show you their specific actions. And so these are all the entities. This guy here, that's you, when you play the game. And this guy over here, we'll get to that later. So we're focusing on these main middle 3. And so the first one, this long llama. And he's like your Goomba, the little mushroom guy in Mario, walks back and forth. He's pretty easy. He's the first guy you encounter, so you have to either apply one of the 2 verbs to him. You either jump over him or attack him and kill him. Just one, very simple. However, despite the code being relatively simple, you just, one direction goes left, other direction goes right, bump into a wall, turn around. It's actually, this creates a few glitches where you just get stuck in the air, where it wouldn't work. And one of the most frustrating ones is you turn around on one wall, but when he bumps into the other wall, he just kind of spatters into it. Anyway, so, well, that's long but done. Now we've got Bat Boomerang. This guy is a bit different. He's like he follows you everywhere. So generally, when you play the game, he creates the most anxiety because he was like kind of stalking you around. But to beat him, you need to use 2 different verbs instead of just one. So a little bit more complex. Yeah. So you appear, he come out and he attack you, and he keep on following you. And unlike Mongma, who would just turn around and kind of not really care that you exist, this guy definitely cares that you exist. So to defeat it, you have to jump and attack at the same time, rather than just jump or attack. And some of the code shows that he has different states. So sometimes when you're not too close to him and he can't see you, he's perched up on to the top of the ceiling like bats do. When he sees you, he comes for you and he just follows your position around until you get out of his range again. So he's not fastened, otherwise he'd be following you forever. And that would be not great. And the final dude, which is the hardest, is Fireball, which is Fireball. Yeah. And he created, he had 3, he demanded that you use the 3 different verbs. You have to evade, jump, and attack him to defeat him. And he also throws a projectile at you, which no other guy, enemy had done before. So this is some of his code. It's very similar to Batarang, where you get into a certain range, he starts firing at you. When you get outside that range, he starts firing at you. It's the kind of same stuff. It's a bit hard to see. If you want me to go into more, ask me later. Now, the boss monster, this is the guy that was on the very far right of the screen at the start. He's like the final test. He's basically, when you fight him, he's meant to be the consolidation of all the conditioning you've experienced up to that point. So he puts you in a situation where you have to be able to jump, evade and attack multiple times on your feet. And it's kind of the final exam. And if you get a C, you pass because you beat him. And so that introduction there, when he jumps down and bars, this is the whole cutscene. And so I'll go into it a bit more. He's got 3 main states. Ooh, it's coming up. Yeah. A jump state, a charge state, and a dizzy state. And so here you've got the jump state. He's just kind of showing that he can jump real high, being intimidating, watch out. And then he's got a charge state. He's got a clear charge up, and he just runs straight at you. This is a clear obvious indication that you should probably get out of the way, otherwise he's going to smash into you. And after he does smash into you and he hits the wall, he gets dizzy, so then it gives you an opportunity that you should probably attack him. So it's clear-cut, defined areas of what you should do. He also has two forms, so once you beat him at half health, he gets real mad because you're about to beat him, kind of like in movies where the villain is kind of like finally actually starts trying, so he actually starts trying again. And he calls in a minion to help him out. And so here's some of the code. It's a bit more flowcharty. So you've got move 1, move 2, move 3, move 4, move 5, move 6. And so when he's done move 1, goes to move 2, then goes to move 3, and then carry on. And then once he hits move 6, go back to move 1. And so it has, and so there's many different variables that he will change throughout. I can go into that later. That's a bit hard to see. And so the data, all of that was the theoretical side. So I don't know if it actually works. So I got about 18 different people to play, as you can see, a variety of ages, mainly younger people. But actually, I got more non-experienced gamers than experienced gamers to play it. And as you can probably see or guess, the experienced gamers had a much higher rate of completing the level, with 7 out of 8 of them actually completing it, while only 30% of the non-experienced gamers completing the level. And so I measured the amount of level completed. Most people actually got halfway through the level, and I'll delve into that more later. This little graph here, this is the whole entire level as you walk through it. The yellow intensities are where people gave up most. So this is how far they got before they gave up. The biggest intensities are here, the first time you meet the fire guy, and here, when you fight the ram, the final boss. And what this suggests is that the boss was a bit too hard, and I probably should have made him a bit easier. So it shows in practice the difficulty, instead of the code being the hardest, or the music maybe being the hardest, or just the pixel art and making the aesthetics being the hardest in the animation. It's actually the difficulty, fine-tuning that to maintain the desire of having a wide audience. And so let's go to my aims again. My aims were to create a game in which you were taught the mechanics of the game without being directly told by the game or a human, to use music, aesthetics, and gameplay as a teaching tool to code the game. I was only limited to 100 events of code, so that's like phrases of code in the language, and to maintain a wide audience. So in conclusion, I personally feel my artifact was successful at creating a fun game with an intuitive, invisible tutorial woven into it by using my research of games, making my own analysis on other levels, such as Mario or Sonic levels. However, most people said they enjoyed the game, but I think it's maybe because they don't want to hurt my feelings, so I don't know. And I think the coding was quite well versed. So you had many different characters doing different things. No character did the same thing as the other one. Longer, walked around. You had a bat that followed you wherever you went, and then you had a dude that threw projectiles in, so it's quite well versed. And however, due to the lack of success in novice players, it does lead shows me that I need to take a more route of an easier game such as Kirby than a notoriously harder game like Mega Man, which was one of my main influences for making this game. Despite this, I feel I was successful in creating an environment which players can complete and enjoy the game without any direction of help. So thank you. Any questions?
What is the greatest difficulty or challenge that you face in designing the game or in this project?
Well, the difficulty was definitely the hardest thing to typically design, but it's the idea that you don't actually, to condition people, you don't actually need that many different variances. As you see, I only have 3 enemies there and 1 final boss monster. Like that, all 4 things is all you need to really condition people to know how to play your game. And it's trying to keep that concise and not overload the whole system. So the fact that I had a limited amount of coding space and other things that made me really focus on keeping it simple, but yet effective and efficient.
I think you comment a bit more on the role the music had in the conditioning. Talking about the visuals and the kids'
Yeah, I did initially have a slide on music, but I didn't want everybody sitting here feeling a bit awkward as I play the music. Well, basically, sadly I don't have any music to show you, so you can't actually judge for yourself. As Tom talked earlier, music is quite subjective. But basically, the idea around the music was to create, Mario's quite happy, and if you listen to Mega Man, music is quite upbeat. So I wanted to create a merge of that to kind of, keep you wanting to play the game, but it's also quite relaxed, So Mario is how that feels. But music has a big effect in the boss battle. So what happened, when you got down to this long corridor, you were in a long corridor, music cuts out. So you're like, okay, it's a big moment. And this whole new music style comes and starts playing, and it's different. You haven't met any other enemy that's had music play for them that's different for them before. And so it really shows you it's very upbeat, very tense, and it kind of is trying to create emotion, sort of an anxious feeling inside the player. But when they beat the monster, they're like, oh, what a relief, I did it, I'm awesome. So that's the idea.
So would you say the music played more of a kind of large-scale formal role?
Yes, definitely.
Minute-by-minute conditions.
So it helps with, it's like how it works in movies more, it helps inform the emotions and confirm what they're already kind of seeing, rather than informing the other way around. So,
on the coding thing, how did you kind of, what coding skills and levels did you need? And sorry, I'm doing two questions, which
that's
is a
right.
bit complicated. So you talked about the coding, but also, obviously you had other people who played the game, and then how did you incorporate that into did you go back and recode?
Yeah, so the coding itself, after it was finished, mainly stayed the same apart from a few things that I tweaked around, so a few buffs enough. So for example, the fire dude, how fast you threw the projectile changed quite a bit. But it's more of how the level was designed and how I changed the coding of that. So for example, just making an easier gradient to get to the harder stuff. I found lots of people get stuck before they even end the game. So it can be quite frustrating. So the game I definitely started by making it way too hard, and I kept on trying to make it easier and easier, which shows that the difficulty of the game is hard to pinpoint.
One of your game videos was that there was some instructions in the game, you sort of learn how to do it, how to play it just by using the game. Who would benefit from that addition?
Well, so benefiting in like society.
Who are you aiming to sort of give this game to?
Well,
everyone's the objective.
Yeah, well, the idea is that, so it was kind of emulated off the success of Mario. The great thing about Mario, the reason why he's probably so successful is because anybody can sit down and play. And I think one of these things is that, lots of kids who maybe can't read very well or write because they may have a mental disorder or something like that, they can still experience great fun and enjoyment by playing a game and going into a different world rather than having to stay in this one. Thank you very much.